Hi, period 4. So we're going to get started on our next lesson, which is 4.10. So yesterday we started working with inequalities and solving inequalities, and today we are going to continue working with inequalities. For this lesson, you may want to have a couple of different colored writing utensils, so a pencil and a couple of pens, or a pencil and some highlighters. So we're going to start off with something that may seem like an English lesson, but I promise you that it is important to your math lesson. So we have these claims here, and we have to decide whether or not these claims are true or false. So let's look at this first one. It says, right now I am in math class and English class. So take a second, write down whether you think this is true or false. Okay, hopefully you wrote down that this is false. You obviously cannot be in two places at once. You are either in math class or you're in English class, but you can't be in both places. Okay, take a look at our next statement. The next statement says, right now I am in math class or English class. Take a second, write down whether or not you think this statement is true or false. Okay, I'm hoping that you wrote that this statement is true because you are in one of these places. You are in math class. Okay, so both of these statements are what we call in English compound statements. Okay, now in English we call them compound statements, and in math we also call them compound statements, even though they may look a little bit different. Okay, so let's take a look at this first compound statement. I have 3 plus 5 equals 8, and 5 is less than 7 minus 1. Okay, I want to know, is this statement true or false? So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out, what does this equal? And what does this equal? And I want you to write down right here whether or not you think this statement is true or false. Okay, so I know by looking at this that 3 plus 5 does equal 8. So I know this part is true. But since this says and, I need to make sure that the other part is also true. So this says 5 is less than, if I do this subtraction, it's 6. And that is true. 5 is less than 6. So the statement altogether is true. So this is a true compound statement. Okay, take a look at the next one. The next one says that 10 plus 2 does not equal 12, and 8 minus 3 is greater than 0. Okay, well, I want you to write down whether or not you think this statement is true or false, the entire statement together. Okay, well, 10 plus 2 does equal 12, so this part is false. And 8 minus 3 is 5, that's greater than 0, so that part's true. But if I'm looking at the statement altogether, it says and. So I can't have false and true. It's either all true or it's not true at all when I use and. Okay, so this statement's actually going to be a false statement. Okay, so in mathematical sentences like English sentence, a compound statement is separated by and. Okay, if it's separated by and, it is true if the entire statement is true. Okay, if it's separated by or, it's true if any part of the statement is true. So with these next two problems here, we're going to try to decide whether or not the entire statement is true or whether or not the entire statement is false, based on looking at each statement individually. Okay, so looking at this first statement, we have x plus 8 equals 3 or x minus 6 equals 2. Okay, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some line because I have two parts of my statement here. So I'm going to just draw a line around the compound section, which is the or, and I'm going to solve each one. Okay, this is solving equations. This is more practice for us. Subtract 8 from both sides. We get x equals -5, or add 6 to both sides, x equals 8. So what this is telling us is this statement will be true if x equals -5 or x equals 8. So in this case, it's almost like this statement has two solutions, because either one of these numbers, when I plug it in, is going to make part of this compound statement true. And if any part of an or statement is true, the entire statement is true. Okay, let's take a look at this next statement right next door. This is also a compound statement, but you'll see that this one has and, not or, but it still splits our statement into two parts. So let's look at what has to happen here to make this equation true. So on the left-hand side, we need to add our 6 to both sides, and we get x equals 7. And we're going to subtract 2 from each side. We get x equals 7. Okay, so you'll see that these are actually matching up exactly. It's the same exact number. X equals 7 and x equals 7. That's because this entire statement, all of this thing together, will only be true when x is 7. So the statement is only true when x equals 7. Okay, so let's take a look at this next part. So this is the next part where you will need some colors for your notes, so make sure you have those ready. So using our first color, we are going to graph the inequality x is less than 3 on the number line. So I'm going to use blue just because I already have it up. So x is less than 3. So this is less than, so I know that's open circle. So on 3, I'm going to place an open circle. And I know less than is to the left, so I'm just going to kind of shade it to the left just so I can see where it is. It says using a different colored pencil, or if you have a highlighter, you can use a highlighter. You want to graph the inequality. X is greater than -1 on the same number line. So I'm going to go where x is -1, open circle, and I'm going to shade in all the numbers that are greater, which is going to the right. Remember, it's great to be right. So using a third color pencil, they want us to darken in the numbers that are on the number line where x is less than 3 and it is also greater than -1. So here it's really important. Okay, and I want to know where both of them are happening. So if I look at this graph, I can see where both of them are happening because I've done it in different colors, and I can clearly see I have red and blue here. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to shade it in because this is where both of them are happening. Okay, so this would be right here, the solution set for this compound statement, which is right here. So if someone were to give me this statement and said, what are possible solutions? I know the only possible solutions would be the numbers that are in here. Okay, so let's take a look at the next part. What I want you to do actually is to read the directions here. I want you to try to do this on your own and then come back and check the video to see if you did it correctly. Okay, so press pause right now, do this problem. When you're done with it, come back and check if you've done it correctly. Great, so I'm hoping that you've paused it and checked to see if you've to at least try it. Let's see what you should have. And if you've got it completely correct, you can just move on to the next part of a lesson. If not, then stick around and listen to the explanation. So, what you should have on your graph is you should have something that looks like this, and you should have something that looks like this, and you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so if you have that, great, good for you. I want you to go on to the next video, which will give you more directions. If you didn't have this as your answer, then stick around and I'm going to explain to you how we got this answer. Okay, so reading this problem over again, I can see that we need to graph the inequality x is less than -4. Okay, so on -4, I need to put an open circle. We should know that less is to the left, so I'm shading it to the left. Okay, with my other color, I need to put x is greater than 0 on the graph, so I'm going to put a circle on 0, and I'm going to shade the part that is greater. Remember, it's great to be right, so I go to the right. Okay, and then it says to color in the parts where, on the number line, where it fits this compound statement. So this is a compound statement. I have this or here. Okay, remember, or, any solution that's for, if it works for any part, it works for the entire statement. So for the or statement, it's actually the exact same thing. I can have all of these numbers and I can have all of these numbers. If I use either one of those numbers in this compound statement, it's going to work. Okay, so that's it for the notes today. Well, kind of. The group work is a little bit different. So what we're going to do for the group work is in the next video. So before you start working on the group work, go to the next video because that has the directions for that part.